When the inner world is neglected, the outer world grows louder. Carl Gustav Jung. You're not addicted to your phone. You're not truly obsessed with sweets. You don't need Netflix games or endless stimulation. What you're really doing is trying to avoid facing yourself. And that not life itself is what's draining you. You check Instagram for the fourth time in 10 minutes. You turn on Netflix even though nothing truly excites you anymore. You add things to your cart not because you need them, but because you feel empty. Is it possible you don't actually want those things? Carl Jung once said people will do anything no matter how absurd to avoid facing their own souls. In our times, that absurdity takes the form of a tap, a ping, a scroll. We call it pleasure, but in truth, it's anesthesia. Not joy, but a numbing agent for a wound we haven't yet named. Let's ask ourselves honestly. Have you ever eaten not out of hunger, but out of emptiness? Played games not for fun, but to avoid your responsibilities? Or that phone call you keep dodging? Chased intense stimuli, porn, alcohol, fleeting flings, just to feel like you're still alive? Many call this comfort seeking, but in truth, it's trauma soothing, an attempt to calm pain we've never dared to name. Comfort is rest for recovery. Trauma soothing is escape dressed up as indulgence, all to avoid touching the real pain. Here lies the trap. What we call pleasure might simply be distraction wrapped in sugar. It doesn't heal us. It only helps us forget that we've never truly come home to ourselves. So what is true pleasure? To understand that, we must ask a deeper question. What part of you is receiving that pleasure? Is it the soul being nourished or the ego being lulled to sleep? Most pleasures today, TikTok reels, likes, online validation, aren't true joys. They're emotional compensation. They are conditioned responses learned early in life. Feeling bad, eat a cookie, or don't cry, here or watch a cartoon. Slowly, we stopped feeling emotions and started avoiding them. We didn't learn to hold our feelings. We learned to replace them with stimulus. And the unsettling truth is this didn't just happen. It began long ago. In the next part, we'll journey back in time to when you were 4, maybe 5, and we'll explore how these avoidance reflexes were quietly planted in your psyche. Because to understand why you crave pleasure today, you must first see what part of you has been starving for far too long. Pleasure, not joy, but a form of psychological anesthesia. There's a painful truth that few dare to face. We're not truly enjoying life. We're running away from ourselves. And what we often call pleasure, delight, satisfaction, indulgence is not the reward of a life well lived. It's a numbing agent to avoid feeling our pain. Think back to a recent moment. You opened YouTube just to unwind for a bit, but 40 minutes passed and you don't even remember what you watched. Or that greasy midnight snack, you weren't hungry. You just felt empty. Or those nights when you reached for your phone, played that explicit clip, not to feel pleasure, but just to feel nothing at all. We think we're choosing joy, but we're really choosing numbness. And the frightening truth is that numbness may have been programmed into us since childhood. Pleasure as a mechanism of emotional avoidance. Anesthesia disguised as joy. Carl Jung showed us that each person carries a shadow, the parts of ourselves that have been rejected, repressed, or denied. And the shadow doesn't disappear. It just learns to wear masks. In the dopamine-saturated age we live in, shadow wears the mask of pleasure. You laugh loudly at a meme, but your heart still feels heavy. You chill with a cocktail, but deep inside you ache with loneliness. You dive into a hookup, not for connection, but to escape the dream you're afraid to revisit. Pleasure, when unconscious, becomes psychological anesthesia, like an over-the-counter drug. It makes you feel better, but it doesn't help you heal. And slowly you need more of it, stronger, more frequent, just to feel nothing. Comfort seeking versus trauma soothing. Are you healing or hiding? The most important step in awakening is to ask, are you seeking comfort because you need recovery or because you're avoiding pain? Comfort seeking is a conscious act of self-care. Examples: taking a mindful rest after a long day, enjoying a meal to savor flavors and nourish your body, meditating to reconnect with your inner world. Trauma soothing is unconscious avoidance. Examples: binge watching for 6 hours to stop thinking, snacking nonstop to fill emotional emptiness, scrolling endlessly to escape loneliness. Pleasure in itself is not wrong, but unconscious pleasure used as a reflex to escape, that's when your shadow is in control. Common examples of numbing pleasure: gumming. Not all gamers are escaping, but if you play to forget time, forget reality, forget yourself, it's no longer entertainment. It's anesthesia. Binge watching. If you can't stop after episode 1, 2, and 3, you're not enjoying the story. You're running from the emptiness that has no name. Explicit content. There's nothing wrong with natural desires, but when it becomes a way to numb loneliness, disconnection, or stress, it's shadow slipping out through seemingly harmless acts. Pleasure is a learned reflex, not a free choice. Think back to childhood. You cried, they gave you candy. You got angry, mom turned on the TV, don't cry anymore. You felt sad, dad said, go play, you'll forget. We learned emotions are inconvenient. Silence is dangerous. And pleasure is the fix. So we grew up never learning how to sit with ourselves. We panic in silence. We feel off when our phone dies. We go numb when there's nothing to do on a Friday night. You are not broken. You're just replaying an outdated emotional operating system. If you've made it this far and something inside you feels seen, know this, you are not alone. Millions of people are caught in the same cycle scroll. Dopamine, guilt, repeat. We don't have to stay silent anymore. Drop a comment. This hit me. Or share the last time you used pleasure to escape something deeper. Because the moment we speak truth, it loses its grip. And when we connect with others who dare to be honest, healing begins. But awareness is just the beginning. To break free from the mask of pleasure, we must return to where it all began. Childhood. In the next part, you'll explore how your avoidance reflexes were quietly planted in early life, how society, school, and even misguided love conditioned pleasure as a false emotional escape, and most importantly, how to decode your shadow through your everyday habits. Are you ready to turn inward? Childhood, where pleasure becomes a sugar-coated scar. When a child falls and cries, what's the first thing most adults do? Not how are you feeling, not sitting beside them in silence, letting the tears come and go. But shh, I'll give you a candy. Or don't cry, let's turn on the cartoons. And in that exact moment, a tiny seed of avoidance is planted. Pleasure is not instinct, it's taught, conditioned, and repeated. A child doesn't instinctively use pleasure to avoid pain. They cry, they tremble, they feel their emotions with raw honesty. It's only when society, through parents, schools, or media, unconsciously teaches them that negative emotions are not okay, that they begin learning how to numb feelings through comfort. Each time a child is rewarded with pleasure for not expressing their true feelings, the brain records a pattern: emotion, rejection, pleasure, acceptance. The nervous system and emotional memory. You're not overreacting, you're reliving. In your brain lives the limbic system, the emotional core, responsible for stress responses and emotional memory. As a child, your prefrontal cortex, the part that regulates logic and reasoning, is still under construction, but your limbic system fully active. Which means childhood memories aren't stored logically, they're stored emotionally. Every time you were scolded for crying, ignored for feeling sad, or locked up for being angry, your brain recorded it as a survival threat. So as an adult, when similar feelings arise, your brain automatically triggers avoidance, usually through pleasure. This is memory consolidation, your nervous system using past emotional experiences to build its response map for the future. School, where emotions are labeled as problems to fix. At school, the quiet, obedient, focused kids are praised. The restless, dreamy, tearful ones sent to counselors labeled ADHD or punished. When a child isn't allowed to feel sadness, anger, or anxiety in a healthy way, they look for side doors to escape emotions. And the most accessible side door, pleasure. A child who wasn't heard when sad becomes an adult who jokes too much. A child who was shamed for anger becomes pleasant but carries explosions inside. A child ignored when anxious grows into someone addicted to busyness, afraid of rest. These aren't flaws, they're miswired defense mechanisms programmed early and left unhealed. Pleasure becomes a replacement language for emotion. When we aren't taught how to express emotions, we invent a new language. And that language is pleasure. Smiling more than necessary, eating when not hungry, mindless scrolling, sex without connection, shopping to feel valuable. In these moments, pleasure isn't a reward, it's surrender. We use joy as a patch for a soul quietly cracking beneath the surface. If you've ever asked yourself, Why can't I stop? Why do I feel empty right after having fun? Why do I always feel guilty after pleasure? You're not broken. You're living inside a neural map that was never updated. So, leave a comment. When was the first time you remember being forced to be cheerful? What pleasure habit do you use to avoid emotion? Because your courage, your willingness to speak truth, might be the very light someone else needs to find their way. In this community of truth tellers, shadow lookers, soul healers, it might just be the first place real healing begins. At this point, you might be asking, so what can I actually do? How do I stop being ruled by pleasure but still enjoy life? In the next part, we'll uncover the dopamine loop, why you always need one more hit, why real joy feels harder than emotional numbing, and how to rewire your nervous system so you no longer react to avoid life, but choose to fully live it. Shadow, not a demon, but a voice that was never heard. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The darkness within us isn't made up only of shameful parts. It also holds the pieces of ourselves we were taught to hide in order to be accepted. What is the shadow? Not a ghost, but a fragmented soul in captivity. According to Jung, the shadow isn't some cinematic evil force. It is everything you've ever hidden, rejected, or been told was not okay. The anger you weren't allowed to express. The vulnerability labeled pathetic. The jealousy, helplessness, or fear of abandonment you've judged in yourself. The unacceptable desires, the fear of getting hurt, the rage you've swallowed. The shadow is not a demon. It's a forgotten child inside you screaming in silence. How do you recognize the shadow in daily life? The shadow won't knock on your door. It hides in your everyday unconscious behaviors, especially in moments when you think you're fine. 1. When you overreact to others. You get extremely irritated by show-offs. Maybe you were taught that confidence is bad. You judge people for being too emotional. Maybe you were shamed for being too sensitive. You criticize weakness in others. Maybe you were never allowed to be weak. The shadow often shows up in mirrors. What triggers you in others may be exactly what you've disowned in yourself. 2. When you feel empty. After joy, you just came back from a party. You laughed a lot, but now you feel hollow. You finished your favorite meal, but you still crave something, and it's not food. You binged a fun series, but you're not energized, not truly. That's not because you're greedy or lack control. It's because you just gave yourself pleasure when what you really needed was truth. Pleasure doesn't nourish the soul when it's used to run away. 3. When you can't sit in silence. The shadow hates stillness because in stillness, it starts to speak. That's why you need a podcast while showering, music to fall asleep, social media whenever nothing is happening. The less you can handle nothingness, the more your shadow is begging to be heard. Pleasure and shadow, a dangerous relationship. Pleasure isn't just where you hide from the shadow. It's where the shadow learns how to control you. You're angry but afraid to express it. You eat. You fear not being good enough. You shop to feel worthy. You're lonely but can't admit it. You seek quick fixes, sex scrolling distractions. The shadow isn't just a weakness. It's an ancient survival mechanism, a system built to protect you. But if you never engage with it, it will run your life through fleeting pleasures. Let your shadow be heard. The shadow grows in silence, but it begins to heal the moment it's seen. Try this. Leave a comment with something small and honest. A behavior you fall into when stressed. A part of yourself that was once shamed and you still struggle to show. You don't have to be right or deep, just real. That honesty will be the first light to touch the darkness. And you won't be alone in this journey. We, those who dare to face the dark, are learning to walk together hand in hand. How do you talk to the shadow? By now you may sense your shadow showing up in daily habits. So how do you stop it from taking over? In the next part, you'll learn how to talk to your shadow without destroying yourself. How to tell the difference between real emotion and avoidance reflexes. And how to transform pleasure into a tool for self-integration, not a weapon of escape. Are you ready to meet yourself? Now that we've seen the cause and faced the shadow, it's time to move from awareness to conscious action. How can pleasure become nourishment again rather than a beautifully wrapped escape? 1. Everyday pseudo-pleasures, the illusion of relief. Pseudo-pleasure, what I call sugar-coated painkillers, surrounds us. Shopping therapy. You buy something you don't need, feel a brief rush. Then the high fades faster than the bill arrives. Social media validation, likes, comments, follows a hit of free dopamine. You feel seen until the notifications stop. Entertainment overload. Not just games and binge-worthy series, but TikTok and Reels too. Each video is a dopamine drip. You're not watching for joy, but for numbing. Eventually, we see the pattern. Most of the pleasures we chase aren't meant to heal us. They're meant to hide the wounds we've never dared to look at. 2. Why pleasure doesn't heal, a biological and psychological perspective. Biology, dopamine, and the limbic trap. Whenever you receive a perceived reward, it's like a new outfit, a thrilling storyline, your brain releases dopamine. The brain's way of saying you're alive, you're okay. But dopamine doesn't heal. It just powers a temporary reaction, then fades, leaving a hollow space that demands another hit. Your limbic system memorizes this pattern: frustration, reward, quick high, crash, repeat. Psychology, not heaven, but a filter. Jung taught true healing doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from meeting it head-on from within. Fake pleasure might make you smile, but it's just a screen making you feel like you've engaged with life, while your soul is still left waiting at the door. Real pleasure, Jung would say, belongs to individuation, the journey of embracing your whole self, light and dark, strength and wound. Pseudo-pleasure is just a simulation of wholeness, one that robs you of the chance to truly meet yourself. 3. How do you tell the difference, real versus false pleasure? Real pleasure arises from authentic emotion. It brings inner harmony, depth, and a sustained connection with yourself. It doesn't fade fast. It fortifies you. It cultivates resilience and supports personal growth. Pseudo-pleasure is born from emotional discomfort, emptiness, shame, loneliness, or the fear of being still. It arrives fast, spreads fast, disappears fast. It weakens your capacity to face pain, breeds dependence, and tricks you into escape. Real-life examples. Journaling or doing yoga. You feel grounded and nourished. Buying a new shirt. You feel good, briefly. The first builds inner connection. The second fades into silence. 4. Take the power back. Use pleasure. Don't let it use you. A. Pause the conscious stop. When the urge hits to click, buy, post for likes, binge another episode, stop, breathe. Ask, what am I actually seeking right now? B. Feel, let emotions. And even the hard ones, don't run from regret, sadness, or boredom. Let them move through your breath without judgment. C. Choose select nourishing pleasure. Once you've felt it, you'll know what you actually need. A moment of stillness, a walk outside, a conversation, a creative act, something that doesn't flood you but fills you. If you've read this far, you're probably someone who's bought things you didn't need, eaten when you weren't hungry, scrolled until time vanished. Comment below a pseudo-pleasure you just let go of, or a moment when you stopped and chose differently. Your small win could help someone else feel seen, because we are not alone and every act of reclaiming is meaningful. 30, you're the light at the end of the tunnel. Now you understand, the shadow hides inside pleasure. Pleasure alone can't heal. You can pause and choose again. So what's next? The part you've been waiting for. How to build habits of nourishing pleasure. Practical tools, meditation, journaling, reparenting the inner child, mindful presence. How to feel joy without being hijacked by the counterfeit kind. If you're ready to walk into real freedom, the next part will be your companion, gentle, effective, and deeply true. Individuation, the journey back to your true self. After everything, the shadow, the numbing pleasures, the biology of the brain, we now arrive at what Jung called individuation, the sacred path of becoming the most authentic version of yourself. Individuation is not just self-awareness. It's the integration of light and darkness, the act of bringing the shadow into the light so your soul can become whole, no longer fractured. In the Red Book, Jung wrote, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Whoever looks outside dreams. Whoever looks inside awakes. Individuation is inner awakening. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about mediating the dialogue between the conscious ego and the deep soul so that you can stand at the center of your being, both witness and sovereign. Why is individuation so vital? It frees you from pseudo-pleasures. You no longer need anesthesia to escape yourself. It builds a solid inner foundation, no longer tossed around by dopamine highs. It develops emotional wisdom. You empathize without losing yourself. Stay grounded without going numb. Individuation helps you not just exist, but live fully with both your light and your darkness. From memories, dreams, reflections, Jung shared, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." You are not a dopamine addict, not the ignored child, not the fake smile. You are a spiritual creation in the making, shaped by every choice, every moment you live consciously. How to begin individuation, practical first steps. And I will ask ego questions instead of asking, "What should I do?" Ask, "What part of me is being abandoned right now?" When you crave pleasure, pause and ask, "Am I trying to heal or am I trying to escape?" Shadow dialogue journaling. Give your shadow a name. Write to it like this: "Sophia, what are you hurting from? I see you. I'm here." This is how you touch the soul instead of drowning it in noise. Compassionate meditation. Sit in stillness. Breathe deeply. Observe your feelings. As Jung said, remove all that you are not, what remains is who you truly are. It's like gazing into your inner mirror, waiting for your real reflection to emerge. Individuation has transformed millions. You may not believe it yet, but many have shared. After confronting their shadow, they needed less social media because they no longer feared being alone. After feeling their true emotions, they felt more confident because they stopped needing outside gratification. Their deepest joy came not from what they bought, watched, or chased, but from a sense of inner fullness. If you've ever known you were living on autopilot and want to awaken, leave a comment. "I want to learn how to speak to my shadow. I want to try journaling to meet my real self." The moment you share that intent, you've stepped into healing. This community of brave souls like you is where we hold one another accountable to wake up and live whole. You've traveled with me through shadow, the part we hide; pleasure, the bomb or the cage; individuation, your rebirth. The final part of this video will bring you to a vow, a promise to yourself that says, "I no longer live by reflex. I choose each minute of my life. I choose to live fully." If you're ready to turn that into your truth, then the final video will be the bell that rings in a new spiritual winter, one that leads at last to spring. The quiet you forgot to seek. When you turn off the screen, silence returns. No more background music, no more guiding voice, just you with yourself. But this time it's no longer terrifying. Because after journeying through the shadow, peeling back the layers of false pleasure, and touching the ache of loneliness, you've opened the first door into your true home, where your deepest self has been waiting. Remember, Carl Jung never asked us to become someone new in the idealized sense. He simply invited us to become ourselves, more whole, more honest, no longer driven by silent fear. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. C.G. Jung. You no longer have to call repetition destiny. You no longer need dopamine to feel enough. You are beginning to live not behind a mask, but in full presence. And if something in your chest is trembling, even just a little, if something in this video made you pause, fall silent, and reflect, know this: your soul is responding. We're not just touching knowledge, we've just touched the memory of the soul. Let's continue this journey together. You are not alone. So many are walking this same path, people who once used scrolling to feed a hidden hunger, laughter to cover an old tear. Leave a comment below. What part of this video made you fall silent? What pseudo-pleasure do you now see has been running your life? What do you want to reconnect with within yourself? Commenting isn't for performance, it's for connection. And sometimes all it takes is one honest voice to start the healing for many. What can you do next? If this spoke to you, subscribe not for the algorithm, but because you deserve more spaces that bring you home. Share this video with someone you feel might also be running from themselves. You might be the one to light their first candle of change. And if there's a topic you'd like me to explore deeper, suggest it in the comments. This isn't just a channel, it's a community for those awakening. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. C.G. Jung. The journey you're on isn't about becoming good enough for someone else. It's the sacred path of returning and embracing the child you once left behind. If today, instead of chasing something new, you simply sat still, if today, instead of scrolling down, you went inward, then this video wasn't just content, it was a quiet turning point. Save this video so that when you forget, you'll remember you don't need to chase joy. You are the source of joy. See you in the next video, where we won't seek the light, but learn to embrace the darkness with tenderness. And maybe, just maybe, you'll hear your soul singing there.